It's the end of the month, so that means it's time for a wrap up. Now let's get started. We're gonna keep this short and sweet and these introductions short and sweet. I had a plan for this month. It didn't quite go as well as you saw probably in the last video that I posted, that I wanted to film like tiny little episodes and vlogs for each book that was reading on my TBR. I ended up only doing that for one book. I wanted to do it for more, but I ended up only doing it for one. That does not mean I only read one book though, even though I was very afraid that was gonna happen this month. It didn't. I did read more than one book. I think I read like 4 or 5 books this month, which I'm very, very happy with. And yeah, I'll be talking about all the books I read this month and all the books I was planning to read this month that I didn't actually get to, and also all the books that I'm now going to be adding to reading. So yeah, let's just get started. Okay, starting off first and foremost with the first book I read this month, and this is the book that I actually did the vlog on. It took me so long to read, and that is Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. This took me so long to read. I started it on the 10th and I think I finished it like on the 21st. It took me quite and the chapters weren't even that long. The book is long, but the chapters weren't even that long. They were actually quite short, and I didn't actually mind the size of the chapters. It's just like, I don't know if I was feeling in the fantasy mood. I'm not really in the fantasy mood. I'm more of like in a romance mood, and this book just like, it just didn't fit the mood. I ended up rating this, I think I rated it a 3 stars or a 4 stars. I rated it a 4 stars. I think that might go down to a 3 stars because looking back on it now, I feel like I might have been a bit generous with that. I always change my ratings about like literally a couple of days after I read the book. I'll say it's a 4 stars, but I'll change it at some point. But yeah, I've not really got much to say about this book. I have talked about it constantly. It's been on my TBR for so long. I'm just glad that I got it off my TBR finally and I actually finally read it. But yeah, all in all, it was a good book. Just wasn't great. Wasn't feeling the vibes. I just wasn't feeling fantasy this month. But yeah, I read it though. Then it's Verity. I actually think Verity was the first book I read this month, but I started this book last month and I finished it this month. That's why it technically counted, but I didn't start it this month to finish it this month. I absolutely loved this book right from the get-go. I knew this was going to be like very like weird. People have said it's very weird, and I've never read a thriller by Colin Hoover, or I mostly just read romances, but I absolutely loved this. And honestly, Colin Hoover should look into writing more thrillers, but this was absolutely amazing. It was so creepy to the point where I could not read it during the night. I literally had to stop reading this during the night because I just couldn't. I had to pick it back up the day after, even though I wanted to keep reading because it was so addictive. I just wanted to find out what kept happening, but I just couldn't. That is just not for me. I could not read this during the night. It was so creepy. But yeah, quite a short book. I absolutely loved it. I rated it 5 stars at first, but I think it has gone down to 4. Like I said, most ratings change. You'd probably have, like, even if I say a rating in the wrap up, that might even end up changing a couple weeks down the line, where this could be a 4 and it could go down or up again. I don't know, but for right now, this is a 4, and I think it's going to stay like that because it didn't give me that, you know, that feeling that 5-star books give me. So I think it's going to be a 4 because it was really, really good, and I definitely would read this again, and I definitely would recommend this as a thriller. It's one of my favorite thrillers, but it's just, you know, didn't give me that feeling. Next was actually a book that I picked up in the store on a whim. I literally just picked it up in a whim. I did film the vlog for this. I just never ended up editing it because I just couldn't be bothered. So I never edited the video, but I did film it. And that is Isaac and the Egg. I saw this in store and the title caught my eye. And then I read the synopsis and the synopsis caught my attention. And then I was just flipping through the book, and this book is laid out in very, like, you know, weird ways. I'll give you an example, like bigger text, and there's even a word search in here. And when I saw that, like, when I saw all this, I was like, very intriguing, and I bought it, and I started reading it that day. I think I started reading it that day, if not the day after, and I actually read this really, really quickly. I started this on the 22nd and finished it on the 24th, so I actually read this really quickly. and I really did end up liking it. I feel like more people should read this book. It's about a man named Isaac, and basically he's just going through the grief of losing his wife, who recently died, I think a couple months ago maybe. And basically he just, at the start of the book, meets an egg, this egg like creature. It looks like an egg, but obviously isn't an egg. It can talk, sort of, and it can walk, and it's just like this weird alien creature that he finds in the woods. He ends up taking it in, and they form a sort of like a bond, and the egg kind of helps him deal with the grief of his wife. This is very much a sad book, very much about grief. Towards the end, I did get really, really, really emotional. This book in the end was so sad. Yeah, the ending of this book was absolutely amazing. I got really sad during it. But yeah, it's a very emotional read. It deals with topics of grief, obviously. And at the start of the book, Isaac is contemplating jumping off a ledge when he finds the egg. So yeah, but like, yeah. And then the plot twist at the end, there is a plot twist in this book towards the end of it, and the plot twist at the end, absolutely amazing. I actually annotated this book fairly heavily. I underlined it and wrote in it, which is like my usual when I don't want to fully annotate a book with sticky tabs. The most I do is at least underline it, but I also highlighted all my favorite quotes, because this book has some of the most amazing quotes I've ever seen. It's really good. So if you really like literary fiction, then you should definitely read this book. And it's also really funny. It has some really funny, witty banter between him and the egg, because that's the only person he basically sees in this book, and it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I think you really should read it, and I really loved it. Next was Peter Pan. Now, the reason why I didn't vlog this one, because it's literally a children's book, and it's like literally like 2 seconds long. I did put this on the TBR for this month, and I did end up reading it because it was like really short. And yeah, I don't know, I just didn't end up vlogging this because everybody knows the story about Peter Pan. I didn't feel like it was a thing that I needed to vlog, to be like, oh my god, look, I don't know what's happening, because like everybody knows the story of Peter Pan, everybody knows how it ends. I just love Peter Pan. It's one of my favorite children's stories, and I've never read the book. I've only seen the movie, and I love the movie so much, and I just had to read the book since I read Alice in Wonderland as well and loved that. I absolutely love this. It is really good. I rated it 4 stars. I really liked it. It was a really good book. I loved the language in it. I loved just the weirdness of it. I loved seeing Netherland. It was just really, really good. Obviously, it doesn't hit me the same because I'm not a child, but still, it was a really, really good book. And the edition of this book is absolutely amazing. Like, it's so beautiful. And the pictures in this book, the illustrations, are absolutely beautiful. Like, look at that. Look at that. I literally got this at TK Maxx. Can you believe that I got this at TK Maxx? Like, the illustrations in this book are some of the best illustrations that I've ever seen in a book, like, ever. Like, look at those illustrations. It's absolutely amazing. And yeah, so I really did like this book, really loved it. And yeah, I can't wait to read more classic children's stories like Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. I don't have any in mind right now, but I'm sure I'll read more in the future. And the last book I read is actually not with me physically, because I read it on the Kindle, and that is Magnolia Parks. Now, I have rated many books 5 stars over the past couple of months. Like you've seen in wrap-ups, I've rated books 5 stars. I rated A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime 5 stars. I think it's gone down to a 4. I don't think it ever was a 5 stars. Just, I loved the book so much that I thought it was a 5 stars when I first finished it. But like I said, I usually have to sit with my feelings, and I've sat, and I feel like it's more of a 4.75. And the same thing with Isaac and the Egg. I initially rated Isaac and the Egg 5 stars because I loved it so much, and because it made me really emotional at the end. But I don't think it gave me the 5-star feeling, even though it made me emotional. So yeah, and I just wanted a 5-star book this year. I wanted a 5-star book, and I knew I was gonna read and annotate Icebreaker at some point, and I didn't want Icebreaker to be my only 5-star book because that's a reread, so it doesn't really count. I read Magnolia Parks on my Kindle. It took me like a month to read. I started it in like March 20 something, and I finished it in March, and I finished it in April 20 something. It took me like a month to read, but that's just because I don't usually read on my Kindle. I'm more focused on my physical TBR. I'm literally more focused on like reading all the books I have in my physical TBR, so I have not been that focused on my Kindle. But the Magnolia Parks book is actually a really quick read. That's the only reason why I read it slow. It's just because I just didn't pick it up. But it actually was a really quick read because I managed to finish it like on Sunday. I managed to finish it on Sunday when I was like going somewhere. It was like a 2-hour drive and I was going somewhere, and I read it and I finished it by the end of the day, and I was like 40% through, I think, when I started reading it on Sunday, and I absolutely loved it. It was 5 stars. The ending absolutely broke me to pieces. I'm not going to talk much about it because I can literally rant about the ending of that book all day, or the whole book all day. But yeah, Magnolia and VJ's romance is literally so toxic, but I'm literally so addicted to it. But yeah, those are all the books that I read this month, and now I'm going to be talking about all the books I'm going to read next month. And one of them is A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is a book that I did put on my TBR for this month, and I never ended up reading it just because it was nearing the end of the month. It was nearing the end of the month, and this was quite a thick book, and I knew I was not going to be able to read this by the end of the month. But yeah, I didn't end up reading it in April, so I'm adding it to my TBR because I do want to read it. And I know I just said that I'm not in a fantasy mood really, and I'm more in a romance mood, but I really want to read this because I know that I think there's some romance in this series. I know that there's some romance in this book, and fantasy romance I'm not absolutely fine with. There wasn't that much romance in the Twin Crowns, that's why it didn't really interest me as much. But I know that there's romance in this, and everybody's raving about it, and I just really want to read it to see what everybody talks about and why everybody likes this, and I really hope I like it. And I hope I haven't read it in a wrong time where I'm not in the mood for fantasy, but I feel like it's going to be okay. This is actually the next book I'm starting. Like, my bookmarks are already in there ready to go. This is the next book I'm going to be starting. I'm going to be starting this today. So this is going to be started today. I might make a vlog of it too because it's a very popular book, and I want to see if I share the same opinions as everybody else, and I want to share that with you. So I might be vlogging this. So when I finish this video, you might see another vlog of me in the exact same clothes, picking up where I left off reading this book, because I'm starting it today. Promise that. Another book I'm adding is also a book that I put on my April TBR that I didn't get a chance to read, and that is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I love Lucy Score's last book, By a Thread, and I saw these in store, so I picked them up. I didn't read it this month, obviously for the same reason of it's a very thick book to read, and I didn't think I'd be able to read it by the end of the month, but I did really want to still read it. I didn't want to put it back on my TBR and pick new ones, so I am going to be reading Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is also very famous, so I'm pretty sure everybody knows what this is about. I'm not going to talk much about it. I'm just going to read it this month, and I'm actually going to this time. The next book I'm adding to my TBR is Twisted Games. Like I just said, I'm going to be reading one of the Twisted books a month until I finish the series. I've got 2 more left, Twisted Hate and Twisted Lies. And yeah, I know this one's about, I forgot her name to be honest. Was it like Bridget? I know that this book's about Bridget and her bodyguard, and she's like a princess. I've actually never read one of these books, so I'm really excited because I've never read like a princess and bodyguard story. I've actually never read a bodyguard story. I know that it's a trope where she falls in love with a bodyguard. I know that's a trope, but I've actually never read one of those books, so I'm really excited. I feel like this is going to be one of my favorites because Bridget was one of my favorites in Twisted Love, so I feel like this is going to be one of my favorite books, but I don't know, we'll see. Right guys, so yeah, just had a little break. I'm going to tell you the rest of the books that are on my TBR. And the first one is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I did try to read this a couple months ago, but I never got to it, and I just never ended up just getting to the book. I did put it on my TBR for like, I don't know what I put on my TBR though. I'm sure it's in a wrap up, but I never ended up getting it to it, so I never read it, and I just never put it back on my TBR after that. But this is what got picked, so I thought I'd pick it up. It is a fantasy. Hopefully I will love it because people say that these books are really good, and it's like a mix of money heist, and I love money heist, so I really do want to love this book, even though I'm not really in a fantasy mood, but maybe it will get me in the fantasy mood. We'll see. The next book is actually a book that I also got recently. I got this book when I bought Isaac and the Egg. I bought them at the same time, and it looked absolutely amazing, and I haven't read any books by this author, and I know that they're a very famous author, and that is Stephen King, The Institute. Now, I've never read any books by Stephen King, but I know that many people love his books, and he's obviously a very famous author. I've heard of him. I've never heard of this book, The Institute. It's a thriller, and I saw this cover, and I was like, that cover is absolutely gorgeous. And there's like all these covers that look quite the same at the back, so I think these are Stephen King's new covers for his book. Lots of authors now are getting like cover changes for their books, so yeah, I think this is a Stephen King like book that just got a cover change, because there's loads of them at the back too that I think also have cover changed. But yeah, I absolutely love this cover, so I hopefully, if I like this, I will move on to the rest of the books, and I'll hopefully read more of him because I really like this cover. So hopefully, if I end up liking this book, I'll get the other books that got the cover change. And this is about a boy at summer camp. This is like about a 12-year-old boy at like a boot camp, and they're like being held prisoner there, and basically him and his friend, it's basically them trying to escape this like prison boot camp, and this involves kids with telekinesis. This involves kids with telekinesis. It's reminded me heavily of Darkest Minds, as in like kids in a boot camp prison type thing. They've got telekinesis and special powers, and they're trying to break out. Very much Darkest Minds vibe. I didn't really like Darkest Minds. I read the first one, it was fine, but I never actually got the urge to read the rest of the books in the series, so it must have not been that good if I didn't care to read the rest of the books. I just didn't feel like I needed to. But hopefully this one's better, because the premise sounds so good. The premise sounds so good, and the premise of The Darkest Minds is also a really good book. I just didn't like the delivery, or I didn't like the ending either. But yeah, I'm really excited to read this. It looks absolutely beautiful. The next book is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I have read this before. I read it like ages ago when I was in secondary school, and this is like the first book that I borrowed from a library, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it, and I was thinking about rereading it and maybe annotating it, so I bought the physical copy, and I'm thinking about rereading it because I recently I've recently watched the film, so I really do want to read this book. The cover is also absolutely beautiful, and the story is so sad. I just absolutely love this, so I really loved it when I first read it, so I do want to reread this and like see if it holds up, maybe annotate it. I don't know, we'll see. The next book is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. This is supposed to be like a very funny book about this girl who's like searching for revenge because her family did something like bad to her. Honestly, I'm very intrigued. I don't know if this is thriller. I feel like it's giving thriller vibes, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It sounds very funny. I want to find out what the heck happened, what her family did to her. But yeah, I can't wait to read this one either. And the cover is pink. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the pink and black theme, it's amazing. And so yeah, those are all the books I'm going to be reading. That's a total of 7 books. That is a lot of books. I haven't put that many books on my TBR in like ever. I usually only read like 5, a maximum of 5 books a month, just because I'm a very busy person, so I maximum only read 5, and I'm a slow reader, so compared to everybody else, I'm a slow reader. People who know me will say I'm a fast reader, but compared to other people who read books, I'm very slow. I read like 5 books a month, and this is a total of 7 books, so hopefully I get through some. But yeah guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. I might be doing some reading vlogs for these books. I'm hoping to, at least. I love doing reading vlogs. They're really fun. It feels like I get to vent and talk about the books that I'm reading. But yeah, that's it. I hope you liked it. See you next time. Bye.